Hey, hey! Stop! Put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Take my car down.
Put the gun down! All right.
Get out the car. Move slow. Get out the car.
Okay, I'm getting out of the car.
Get out.
I'm getting out of the car.
Get out. Take the car down. Take this down. Take some minutes. Put the gun down. Take it down. You're on video, man. Take it down. Okay, put the gun away. Please. Take it down. Lay down. Are you looking for the back? I'm looking for the back.
Past mistakes. And we can create training for our agents to mitigate these assaults and serious injuries resulting in the loss of their lives. Today, as previously discussed, we are blessed to have two industry leaders with us, Mr. Mark Lacek and Mr. Todd Case, to share their expertise with us all. Good afternoon, Mark and Todd. Once again, thank you for joining us. We have so much to cover today, and we only have an hour to get as much as we can as possible. So let's begin the discussion. Todd, the first question goes to you. Exactly what is situational awareness?
Thanks, Vaughn. Situational awareness is the understanding of environment, its elements, respect to time, and other factors. It's being aware of what's happening around you in terms of where you are, where you're supposed to be, and if anything is a threat to your safety.
Let me ask you this, Todd. How does this apply to our industry, and why does so many recovery agents lack situational awareness?
The repossession industry obviously comes with a lot of inherent risks. Agents are like police officers, so to speak. We're responding to an area or a scene where generally we're not wanted to be at. And in an instance, things can change. We need to be aware of our surroundings and environment even before we arrive on that scene. For examples, what do you see when you're entering a neighborhood or a parking lot? Are you entering through the only exit? Where are you in regards to your target location? Being observant of people and the surroundings, but not being obvious. Take note of the vehicles that are in the area. And this is where really the agents need to take their time. It's not a race. I mean, a lot of agents have this concept that they need to secure as many cars as possible, but the industry's changed. Having good situational awareness allows you to have options in regards to what happens next. As far as the recovery agents and the lack of training, or excuse me, lack of situational training, it comes down to training. Usually our training is because of the lack of manpower. For instance, in regards to training, when I became a police officer, my initial academy was 19 weeks. During that time, 40 hours of that was dedicated just to use of force and de-escalation. When I came to Indiana, I attended a lateral academy, which was another 4 weeks of training. And we also had, I was fortunate enough to attain 32 hours of street survival school. I guess my point here is all this training went into me as a police officer to be able to overcome these situations that may come my way. As agents, we often hire people. We put them in a truck after a few hours of talking to them or a day or two of training, and we send them on their way. There's no way that they're going to be able to understand or even detect something before it goes wrong. One of our biggest things is we hire people from other agencies that we believe have training, we believe have experience, and in some situations, they don't have any significant training at all. They appear confident, however, they're more or less complacent. They've been doing the same thing for so many years that they've been comfortable with the situation. They're setting their routines, and if they were ever to encounter a serious situation, they probably wouldn't know how to react to that. So there's a difference between looking the part and being the part.
Yeah. Thank you, Todd. Mark, let's get you in on this conversation. Can repossession agency employees do anything to protect themselves from incidents of assault and violence?
Thank you very much, Vaughn. And Todd, thank you. You hit that right on the head. In reference to employees and not on the street, I think that office security is paramount, and three things come to mind. First, never let a debtor into your employee area or in the office. A secure reception area when debtors come to retrieve their property should be just that. It should be somewhere where they can walk in a room and then perhaps see you through a glass. And I'm sure some of you already have this, but for those that don't, precautions like that certainly deter some violence. Number two, never let a debtor into your storage area. If he's there to pick up a vehicle, then that vehicle should be brought out and placed in an area where when he gets in and leaves with it, he's not affecting the safety of any personnel or any other vehicles in the lot. And third, and I think this is very important, you have to have monthly meetings with all of the employees about safety and the laws on the job. Provide examples of breach of peace to your employees. I talk about the consumer protection laws. Talk about when there's an objection to the repossessor, that actually you should drop the vehicle and come back another time. And I want you to write this down now, everyone listening. In reference to a monthly meeting, you should have your monthly meetings where your employees sign that they attended the meeting. I've been through countless of depositions where opposing counsel asks recovery agent or office employees if they had any kind of training or monthly meeting. You'd be surprised when the answer is no, how that can affect the outcome of a lawsuit. So keep in mind, have those meetings.
Thank you, Mark. Second question is, do you believe if you take this to the street level, with all these changes in our industry, that we need to maybe have a cultural shift on the front lines?
That's another excellent question. And I'll tell you what, years ago, we used to dress like a professional more than I think we do today. Keep in mind that you're not a tow truck driver. You may be a tow truck driver when you're delivering something to the auction from your yard, but when you're out on the street, you're representing the lender. Don't dress like a tow truck driver. Wear a collared shirt, maybe button-down shirt and slacks instead of shorts and sandals. You gotta look professional. Agents should have knowledge of both communication skills and body language, because how you look and how you act is going to determine how you're perceived, right? When you're in a confrontation with a debtor, and please remember this, it's an embarrassing moment for that consumer. He's going to be embarrassed. And studies have shown that humiliation and embarrassment turns to rage and anger. So you want to eliminate some of those words that could possibly get him to become embarrassed. I'll tell you what, I never used the word repossessor out in the field when I was talking to a debtor. I explained that I was there to transport the vehicle. You'd be surprised the difference by using the word transport and the word repossessor. They know why you're there. They know you're there to repossess it, but when you say it out loud, it seems to have a different meaning. So it's not important. It's important to use those words. It'll decrease the chances of a consumer becoming angry or having feelings of guilt. I'll tell you what, we all know who Alex Price is. And we talk about training and knowledge and training in the field and training in the office, but Alex sent me a very interesting quote the other day. He said, never stop learning, because life never stops teaching. I thought, wow, man, what a heavy statement. And Todd, you hit it right on the head when you talk about complacencies. It's not only the young guys that are getting themselves in trouble. The older guys who become complacent. So never stop learning.
That was well put. Thank you, Mark. Todd, let's bring you back in on the conversation. Given your extensive background in law enforcement, what can we do at the agent level to increase situational awareness within this industry?
Thanks, Vaughn. We're going to go back to training and education. I mean, that's basically what we can do. in almost every situation that I've ever experienced, whether it be as a police officer or in my career as a repossession owner and agent, there was always signs that something was going to happen before it happened. Unfortunately, without some type of training, most people do not know what to look for or how to recognize these signs. So it's best that we take this and design a training program that works for us, that works for our team. Make sure we're including in situational awareness and de-escalation training, communication skills. Anything that helped your agent to be able to de-escalate a situation is going to be imperative. But training is only as good as you take it. So if you take it seriously and you train good and your agents take it seriously, they're going to respond well. Obviously, under times of stress, you're going to react the way you were trained. So if you take your training poorly, you're going to react poorly. That's how the body is. It's considered muscle memory, and you're going to get used to doing something a certain way. So when it comes to training, make sure you instill into your team that this is serious. We have to take this serious. But training shouldn't stop at the company level, and it shouldn't stop with just classroom. Train your guys to be mentally prepared as well. Obviously, if they come to a shift, they're tired, they got 4 Red Bulls in the truck, they're not going to be able to go out and perform like they should be. They're not going to be alert. They're not going to be aware like they're supposed to be. So make sure that they're mentally prepared. Some companies put together physical fitness standards. All this will help. Make sure that you have a plan together, that they come in at night, all their equipment's checked out, their trucks are checked out, things are in order, because any one of these little things can set somebody off, so they're not going to be focused for that evening. Again, at the company level, training should expand beyond that. Agencies and state associations should offer to educate their communities, law enforcement partners, and lender partners. And also encourage our lender partners to consider situational awareness and the violence in the industry, so they can teach their teams how to assign assignments that possibly have a risk of being violent. And not dual assign assignments, or not reassign an assignment that's been potentially violent. I think together with education and training, we can make the industry safer.
Thank you, Mark. With your extensive experience in cases where breach of peace have been at the center of a plaintiff's case, I want to direct the next question to you. Do you believe that minimizing confrontations with debtors will ultimately reduce the risk of injury and or death to both the agents and the consumer?
My screen just disappeared for a moment. Tony, can you just briefly move that breach of peace thing so I could change my pad? All right, you can put it back on. Vaughn, the answer is definitely yes. I can tell you that agents are failing to properly avoid a confrontation with the debtor. I think that maybe because there's so many accounts and it's so important that you want to bring that metal to the yard. I think that you're just taking more risks. I think in the past we were more careful choosing the moment to hook and book. I think there's 3 policies that agents should understand and follow while they're in the process of repossession. And these are important. Number 1, don't conduct an inspection or a vehicle condition report at the debtor's residence. I don't know who started doing that. Remember, you're supposed to be quick about this. Number 2, never door knock after hooking the collateral for any reason, right? I mean, guys are hooking up to the collateral and walking up and knocking on the door. That's asking for trouble, right? A self-loader truck is built for speed and stealth, and you're supposed to be able to get in and out in 15 seconds. I know that's what everybody says. That's what Dynamic talks about in Miller Industries. I mean, it's about getting in and out quick. And if you want to knock on the door, go out and buy a $6,000 tow truck, 20-year-old tow truck with a Holmes 220. To get the job done, you won't have to spend so much money. Number 3, this is very important. Just because the collateral is hooked to your tow truck doesn't always mean you have a right to continue with the repossession. Keep in mind, consumers have rights also. And a self-help repossession is only legal as long as there's no breach of peace. And courts have ruled across the country. You'll see it written right here. Courts have ruled across the country that just the objection to the repossession constitutes breach of the peace. Now, a lot of states, they have these custody and control, this custody and control language written in the law. I hate to see that because agents are getting this false sense of authorization. They feel like just because it's hooked up, that they have a right to get out of there. Keep in mind, when you're in court, because you were served with a lawsuit, judge and jury are going to look and they're going to determine whether there was a breach of peace, whether or not you were hooked or not. The safest thing to do is when you're confronted with any kind of opposition or verbal objection, be kind and be nice. Stand there and ask, hey, how can I be of some help? And understand body language. Hold your hands out open. That means that you're being friendly. Now, this whole custody and control thing, it could be deceiving. So do what you think is right. Do what your training tells you to do. I think in layman's terms, you know what? When someone says, hey, drop my car, just drop the car. You can always come back and get it another time. No means no. Don't take my car. Agents have to remember the law. Law in reference to repossession says, and I'm going to tell you again, and I'll tell you this all the time, there's two types of repossessions. There's the judicial process and the self-help. With the judicial process, that means they got to send a sheriff out with a replevin. And the self-help repossession means no breach of the peace. Remember that. Not an attorney, but you don't need to be an attorney to read those simple words. And you just have to write that down and have those monthly meetings. It's all very, very important. I can tell you one more quick thing in reference to that. I've read depositions where the repossessor was asked the question, have you ever heard the term breach of peace? And believe it or not, some of the answers were, well, no, I don't know what that means. It's just amazing.
Wow. Thank you, Mark. Todd, let's get back to you. Tell us the importance of de-escalation training for the recovery industry. And then how can agents use that training to minimize injury to both themselves and potentially a consumer?
Well, de-escalation training is critical. We can't predict when violence will strike, and we can't predict when violence will strike. And in many cases, if you can de-escalate a situation, generally you can change the outcome. Like the video that was shown in the very beginning, that was one of my agents. And I really, truly believe that outcome could have been different. I feel it would have got a lot worse if that agent didn't, remain composure, keep his composure as much as possible. And it probably would have been a lot worse. For instance, in law enforcement, in my 16 years, I've probably been in a dozen of fights. And I'm talking the fights that you're in, that you're knock them out, drag them out fights. In that same time, I know officers that have probably been in a fight like that once a month. I feel like the difference is that I was able to de-escalate, was able to talk to people to get them out of this certain situations where some officers either chose not to or just couldn't have that. They didn't have that knack or that ability to de-escalate. So I was able to somewhat write the script on what happened next. Agents who can properly de-escalate a situation, in most cases, will be able to talk their way out of a violent situation, even if it's just enough for them to leave. Not allowing the things to get out of hand or not adding fuel to the fire will keep an agent and the consumer safe in regards to the repossession. We also need to remember that we're there to secure a vehicle, but if an incident turns violent, we're there to we need to get out of there. There's no harm in retreating. So our focus should shift from securing a vehicle to staying alive when that goes to happen.
Thank you, Todd. Mark, last question goes to you. Earlier, you gave a couple of reasons why we should not knock a door or do field condition reports. We have a video that I'd like you to narrate. Explain your position.
I was the litigation consultant on this case, by the way, and a fellow by the name of Albert Nduli lost his life. This was in your city, and you won't see it on the short video you're going to see, but complete video is probably 6 minutes long, and the repossession agents, they stayed at the scene for approximately 6 to 7 minutes. In fact, when they backed up, if you see that red tow truck there, when they backed up, they actually put their beacon lights on. They backed up to the car, and the helper got out, and he immediately started doing the condition report and taking pictures. They had all the doors open for a while. They took pictures. And by the time 3 or 4 minutes, or by the time they started pulling out, debtor had come down. Someone actually went up. The debtor was in an upstairs apartment. Up there where you see the white pickup truck, he was upstairs. You'll notice, by the way, right when he gets to the street, the video stops. That's because that portion of the video was conveniently lost, which actually showed him. But there's another video from across the street you'll see. An interesting thing about this video is during the deposition, when they asked the repossessor if he had ever heard of the term breach of the peace, he said no, he never heard it. His helper, he lied and said he didn't see the guy jump on the door. But his helper said, oh yeah, we saw him. In fact, I won't name his name. He says he pushed the door open so the guy would fall off. And it was very traumatic, and it was a terrible thing that happened. Go ahead, Tony. It's fine to show the video. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
There's no audio, by the way, everybody.
You see him pulling out right now. And by this time, you see over there, you look at the white, when he's up to the street, you'll see the guy in the white T-shirt right there. He jumps onto the vehicle. And as the repossessor pulls out, he falls out right about there. And the Lincoln Navigator comes around the turn, and as vehicles do. And there's the bus driver coming down the road with Mr. Anduli lying in the road. At that point, he was already dead. The repossessor in this case continued down the road for another half hour to 45 minutes and drove to his lot. And then he called up the police department and asked if there was anybody hurt.
Mark, thank you for that narration. And thank you both, Mark and Todd. Clearly, your professionalism and your expertise was needed in this chat. And we could see that there's a lack of training. It eventually could lead to loss of life. We've heard from you guys, the experts, and over the past weeks, we can see that the lives of our agents are at risk every time they hit the street. And training is the #1 solution that can help mitigate this loss of life, injury, and potential litigation. The face of all national and state meetings must now include some form of de-escalation or situational awareness training. It must be the bedrock of all future meetings. And so this year at NARS, Todd will be back once again in 2 breakout sessions to further this conversation. The worst thing we can do is to navigate forward and take our responsibility to educate our agents and do nothing. The conversation has started today, but it cannot end with this conversation. It must continue. The agents' very lives are at risk, and it's our job to bridge that gap. Tony?
All right. Well, guys, we're going to jump into our Q&A. Looks like I've got one question queued up. If you have a question, please type it out in the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom dashboard. All right, so here's the question we have. Many of the recent, and this is by Kevin Armstrong, from Kevin Armstrong. Many of the recent and past shootings that have occurred over the past few months have occurred away from the scene of the initial recovery, sometimes by third parties. How is this even avoidable?
I'll take the first whack at it, and I think we'll just pass it along to both Todd and Mark. I think that's an excellent question, Kevin. But here's what we know for a fact. When we were preparing for this call, we realized that we cannot prevent everything from happening. However, we can mitigate those things from happening. We can reduce the violence. And we all know, anyone who's been in the street repossessing a car knows it's usually not the debtor that gives us the problem. It's the nosy neighbor, the one across the street that comes off over and asks you, what are you doing? Or feel like it's their responsibility to intervene. Training will help a driver know how to, once again, de-escalate a situation. But once again, I want to reiterate, we can't prevent them all. We can just reduce them. Todd, I'll let you take it, and then maybe Mark.
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, it comes down to that situational training. The situational training doesn't, or the being aware of your surroundings doesn't end when you leave the scene. It stays. Just like our police do, military members, they're always on high alert. Unfortunately, we have entered an industry now that we always need to be on high alert. So when the agent leaves that scene, they also need to be looking at the surroundings around them. Is there a car following them? You know, if you're stopped at a light, you see someone pull up next to you and their window go down. You know, you got to be aware all the time of what's going on around you. I think that's number one. Number two, have a plan. Is your plan to just pick up a car, take it somewhere and drop it off to a rollback, or are you going back to your lot or whatever it is? But have your plan, have your route set. Know that the direction you're going. Don't be stopping at convenience store. Don't be getting out. You know, hook the car up and get it to where it has to go, whatever your plan is. And then after that, if you need to stop at a store, get fuel, whatever, do that afterwards. But don't do that with a vehicle on the back.
Mark, how about you?
You know, Kevin, that's an excellent question. And Vaughn and Todd, you make excellent points. You can't stop everything, but I think a lot of that goes back to choosing the right time to actually hook up to the vehicle and leave. When you hooked up to the vehicle in the driveway, was there someone working in the garage? Did they see you? You just thought, let me get out of there quickly. Were all the lights on in the house? Was it just the wrong moment where you thought maybe I won't get caught? Having the right tools so you can get in and out of there quickly, of course, is important, but choosing the right moment to repossess that collateral. So, and a lot of times you can't stop. I know years ago it happened to me, but I repossessed a car. I went about 2 miles away. I ran into 7-Eleven, get a cup of coffee. I came out and the car was gone. I had no idea that I was being followed. And I always thought maybe I didn't choose the right time to actually take it. And that's the best answer I can give to that question.
Thanks, Mark. Well, any other questions? I don't have any other questions teed up. No other questions came through. Yeah, we've got some couple of comments. I think everybody's got access to those. All right.
You know, if there's not a question right now, let me make a comment in reference to upcoming association meetings, conferences. You know, when you go to a conference, it's not only sitting there and listening to the panelist or the speaker for his hour and 90 minutes. You also have the opportunity during the entire conference, talk with that person who spoke or was on the panel. You can communicate with others who've been in the industry longer. You can, when you see me at a conference, please walk up to me and ask me a question. And if I don't have the answer to that question, I'll guide you to somebody who might have the answer. If you disagree with something I say, please walk up to me and tell me why you disagree with me, because I think that those discussions where some might disagree with each other, I think that's the foundation of solutions. So, you know what? I think the importance of going to all of these conferences and taking every certification course you can for not only you, agent, but the agency owner, the lot attendant. Everybody should have knowledge in your entire organization. And you know what? I think you can also push the client to gain more knowledge. You know, Recovery Agent Services Company, RISC, they offer a course, a certification course for the lender called CARS FC. You might tell the lender, hey, you need to be trained also. I'm sure you want to do it in a safe way or a friendly way. But
Mark, can you repeat those resources? We actually just had a question come in asking for good resources to find, learn about de-escalation.
You know, ARA, the American Recovery Association, has a certification program. RSIG has a certification program. RISC, of course, who has done CARS, they have a certification program. Allied, puts on a certification program where Ron Brown does an excellent a segment on de-escalation. I think that all of these, you get a chance to learn as much as you can. In fact, I even wrote years ago a certification program on repossessing commercial vehicles. You know, I mean, you can never gain enough knowledge on what you're doing.
Hey, Mark, we've got a question directed to you. How important do you feel your trucks, do you feel having your trucks with cameras recording the recovery is in your experience with court cases?
It's very important if you're operating within the guidelines of training, knowledge, and the law, right? Because then you can show those in the trier of fact. You show them that, look, I did everything I could. I was polite. I was kind. I spoke properly. So yeah, I think it's important to have cameras as long as you're utilizing proper training and your methodology and your knowledge. Because if you're making an effort to protect the consumer, everyone's going to listen to you. I guarantee you.
I'll tell you that to add to that, Mark, to David's question, though cameras can also serve as a double-edged sword. To your point, if you're doing everything right, great. But what happens if you're doing everything wrong and you're on the other end of a camera that you have the audio and video footage of, like this guy that killed this guy over on Westheimer? The incident you were referring to in your video, Mark, was actually on Westheimer in Houston. What happens then? Do you tell the attorneys that's questioning you that, oh, I don't have the footage, even though you know you do? Do you wait for a deposition to hit you and then you have to produce that footage? It's a double-edged sword. So yeah, you want the footage, but you can't hold it even when it paints you in a bad light.
You're asked if you have footage, and you have footage, you very well better, because later on, if it comes up and it says you lied, the judge is going to hate you. And Leon Scroggins just made a very important comment. A lot of times, if you have footage that's going to protect you, then the attorney will drop the lawsuit. Because now when every police officer has body cams, right? Police officers, they don't want to be pulled into a lawsuit. Departments, they don't want to be involved. So when an attorney asks the police department for video, they're going to give it right out. So don't lie, because if you get caught.
And to add to that, guys, body cameras are a world of difference for agents. We started using them a little over a year ago, and it de-escalates the situation 9 times out of 10 when they see the body camera. When they're coming up to a debtor, they'll look at that, or a consumer, they'll look at that, and automatically it seems like their demeanor changes. I've had several of my agents say the same thing that says, it looks like they're going to get ready to say something. They see the body camera, and all of a sudden they start to become a little bit more calm. So just from that aspect, having that body camera, knowing that they're being recorded, that's a night and day difference. And then having that footage of that up close and personal conversation, exactly how things went down, because sometimes our trucks, the boom or wheel lift, if it's a rollback, there's different components that may be in the way of seeing that feed. So if you haven't invested in body cameras, I mean, it's a cheap investment, but it's a night and day difference on how things go on the scene.
That's a very good point. Talking about body cameras, I just saw on CU Repossession, Kevin Armstrong's site, they actually have a body camera set up hooked to a vest, which I thought was pretty clear, because I think, and Todd, I think you might be able to attest with this. A lot of the body cameras that law enforcement use are on there by a magnet, and as soon as they're a scuffle, they have a bad tendency to drop on the ground. So those of you who are interested, and trust me, I'm not making any points on this, but there's a new device I saw advertised on CU Repossessor with body cams.
Debbie had asked a question specifically about de-escalation classes. Are you guys aware of classes that agents or agency owners can take specific to de-escalation?
We'll be offering a class at NARS. I don't know if there is and maybe Todd would know that better, but I know the goal for, I think, every state and national association, I know Mark just spoke of Ron Brown, who has a course that's been proven in our industry that trains you on these type of subjects. But we have to continue to put this at the forefront. But Todd, you may have an actual answer on that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% familiar. I mean, fortunately for me, I have some things that I can share with my team that I've used to implement on my own team. But like Mark had said, and you'd said previously, we can never stop learning. So, if there is an outside class, I mean, I'm going to put on a presentation at NARS. Hopefully it helps out. There is some, I believe, like you said, Ron Brown's got one. Is that the correct name? I'm sorry if I.
It was Eagle 20. Eagle, I think Leon corrected in the post, but yeah, it's led by Ron Brown.
So
yeah, I'd be happy to touch on that. Allied is having a Ron Brown at their next mid-year meeting in Las Vegas in November, and I've been to Ron Brown's course on situational awareness a couple of times, and I tell you what, it's filled with knowledge that you're going to want to have. You're going to want to have it as well as your agents. And I certainly look forward to Todd at NARS. I'm really glad to hear that you're having it at NARS. I was at the first NARS. I was at the last NARS, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I guarantee that.
I think to your point, Mark, we can't look at someone based on affiliation and believe we can't gain some type of education from them. Whether Allied, ARA, whoever, Eagle 20, we all have responsibility to educate this network. And wherever you can find that information at, you want to go to those classes and pay attention and learn something.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on Brianna's comment on the post there. If you guys are using cameras, just make sure you know the recording laws in your area. If you're a single party state, or if they need to be made aware. Again, like she had posted there, a lot of our trucks do have in the industry do have audio and video recording notices on them. But just make sure you know what your recording laws are in your states.
And another point to note, and I'm glad you talked about what Brianna brought up. There's more and more state associations now than ever before, and I think that as these state associations evolve and create newsletters and have their own conferences, I think it's important for those board of directors on those state associations to have segments on situational awareness and invite those speakers who are aware of that, and advertise those meetings and get everyone in your area to show up and to have the ability to gain some of that knowledge. I think it's important and vital in reference to future safety of this industry.
Okay. Well, doesn't look like we have any other questions. Vaughn, Todd, Mark, any final comments before we wrap things up?
I'll start off. I'll let Mark go second, and Todd can close this out. When we talk about training, I remember years and years ago starting in this business, and I was trained for 2 days, pretty much. They stuck you in a car because back then we were repossessing with cars and not trucks. We had tools, but there was no training around anything other than whether you had the nerve to walk up somebody's driveway. Today is different. Today you have a guy in a truck who has a box that he has to operate, probably more 4 to 6 switches. He has cameras that he has to pay attention to. He knows he's being watched. He's trying to pay attention to a door, a window, where the danger is going to come from. And all the while, he's trying to pay attention to the breach of peace laws, all the CFPP laws or regulations that have been drawn down on us, as well as making sure he doesn't do damage to a car. And the last thing he's probably thinking about is his own safety. This time we're talking right now, this Fireside Chat, and anything moving forward has to evolve around the driver in the seat of the truck, or even the driver in the seat of a camera car. We've got to give them tools to better allow them to do their job as safe as possible. Now, here's the thing. Our responsibility is to give them the information and the ammunition. Their job is to retain it, learn it, and to apply it. We're not going to be 100% successful, but we can clearly lower the deaths that occurred over the last 3 months And that's our job. If we can look back next year and go, wow, our practice and pushes and policies and procedures have decreased the death and injuries that's occurring in this industry, then I think we've done a good job. But industry experts need to take their place and push as much training as they possibly can, which is why we had Todd and Mark on today, because I can't give you information that they can. So it's important that we surround ourselves with folks like these who can give us information to assist our drivers so that it minimizes their loss and their deaths for the most part. So Mark, I'll let you go first, and then Todd, you can close up.
You know, through training and knowledge, you not only have to take these courses, but you have to apply them to your daily routine. It's one thing knowing what the law is, what you can do, but it's another thing applying it to your daily schedules. Nowadays, it seems like the lenders aren't paying enough as they should for a repossession. And I bet you everybody here agrees with me. So making a second trip, maybe it's the third address that you checked on that vehicle, that might have put that repossession completely out of the profit range. So I think it's important. To, you know what? Tell that client if he doesn't pay enough money, just get rid of him. I read a book years ago, and many of you should. It's called the 80-20 rule. About 15 years ago, after reading the 80-20 rule, I realized that 20% of my clients were paying me 80% of my revenue. So I did something pretty profound. I fired 80% of my clients. I called Ford Motor Credit and I said, you know what? I'm not going to work for you anymore. You don't pay me enough. And he said, you can't fire me. I'm Ford Motor Credit. I hung up. Right? Afterwards, I realized that those 20% clients that I saved, they were actually paying me not only more money, but they were paying me more respect. They didn't bitch and moan about everything that happened, about every invoice. So I think that it's important to understand where when you go to a repossession and your agent might hook and book at the wrong time because he didn't want to make a second trip, I think you have to understand all of this. There's more to it than just knowing when to repossess that collateral. What I'm trying to say is you got to make it profitable. You're working just too darn hard. I hope I didn't go too off subject on that. And I said I wasn't going to talk about clients, but you know what? Clients need to start paying more money or just fire them.
Thanks, Mark. Todd, I'll let you have the wrap this up. Mark's got us on fire.
Yeah. Hey guys, we've been preaching it all the whole seminar here. It's training. It comes down to training. You know, when you hire somebody, they put your shirt on, they're driving your truck, they're a direct representation of your company. So in you're responsible for that person. You know, if they get into something, it's going to come back on the company. You're responsible for them. Make the time to train them. Make the time to make this count. Sitting them down in a room, reading over some rules and regulations. I can't tell you how many times that I've hired people from other companies, like many of you guys have, where they said, I've never seen any of this stuff. We've never been through anything like this. Sit them down, take the time to do it. We're all short-staffed. There's no question about it. But if you take a little bit of time up front, it's going to pay off in the end. Everybody's going to come home safe, hopefully. But at least we're going to make an effort at making that happen.
Thank you, Todd. I knew I said I would let you have the last conversation call, but I want to say this because you just sparked something I think the audience needs to know. And I think Leon or someone put that client expectations have led to some of the violence in this industry. To piggytail on that, I've had a conversation with RDN. Most of us on this call are using them as our software provider. And I think down the road, we're gonna actually have a mastermind on how we can look for the software provider to prevent an account going back to RDN or on RDN when it's been some sort of violence on that account. And I say that because there's cases, and we have video of this, where a guy will pull up to a house and a guy will come out and say, I was waiting for you. I was waiting on you to come back. And the guy would say, well, this is my first time. It's because these assignments are being dumped into this arena, our arena, with no care of, and I'm not saying it's intentional, but sometimes chasing a dollar or chasing recovery rates puts accounts out in the field that's putting our agents' lives at risk. So I believe anyone who's participating in making profit at this level should also participate in creating things that will minimize damage to us. I believe the software providers have a responsibility to ensure that whatever they can do to put the pressure on the clients, that if an account comes into our portal and one of my guys, or let's say Brianna, she's one of my competitors here. Well, let's say she had one of her guys get a gun put in his face. They close the assignment the next morning, but then they open it back up the very next morning with me, with no mention of that situation that happened to Brianna's guy. That's putting our guys at risk. And these are the things that we need to talk about to the folks that are making thousands of dollars off of our backs. So I do, Leon, thanks for putting it out there. We need to speak that. We need to have masterminds around that. What are you doing to better protect us who are paying thousands of dollars to your success? So I've had conversations with them. I think in the next, I'm going to say Q1, we'll be looking for a mastermind class. And it'll probably be on a Zoom call where we can make sure we put everybody's thoughts into what's the best way to make sure when an account comes into a space and it's accepted by anyone, no matter where that account goes, that VIN number must be detected until it changes ownership, that this person is a threat. And that is what something we must work on to improve our industry overall.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Hope you walked away with some actionable information, and just be on the lookout. We're going to be talking about this issue for quite some time. It's obviously important. So until next month, thanks again for joining us, and we will see you in October. Bye, guys.
Appreciate it.